My name is Paul Orser. I'm former Associate Dean of the college at Wake Forest University. And today I'm doing an interview with Jake Reynolds, who is an applicant to the Master Teacher Fellows Program. And now I'm going to ask Jake to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Jake Reynolds. I'm an undergrad student at Wake Forest University. I'm expected to graduate in May of this year with a major in history and minors in secondary education and medieval studies.
Okay, Jake, I'm going to start by asking you the first question, and we'll just go in the order in which they were provided to me, okay?
Excellent.
Please describe, Jake, why you have decided to pursue a career in teaching.
Well, I've thought about teaching for a long time. Going into undergrad, I was very interested in the field of history. Really liked it because it seemed like a lot of stories. I grew up reading lots of books, really enjoying stories about fictional characters and their exploits. And history was very cool to me because it was people actually doing those events for real. And I really like the idea of being able to share that in almost a storyteller-like manner myself. So the field of teaching is a way that I can both share stories and real-life experiences to help kids grow and learn and see that history isn't just remembering names and dates and facts, but it's also very interesting and fun events that they can really get into on a personal level.
Okay. Anything that you want to add before we go on to the next one?
I think that about covers it.
Okay. The second question is, what is the most important quality of a secondary social studies teacher, and how do you intend to exhibit characteristics of it?
I think I would have to go with leadership. I think it's important that as a secondary teacher, you're not just friends with your students, but you really are there to guide them and help them develop. And so, and be a positive adult example, because at this point in their lives, they're transitioning into adulthood, and I feel like not just their parents, but the other adults around them in their lives need to be a positive example of how to live as an adult responsibly and not just complete what is expected of them, but to go above and beyond in their efforts and their goals.
And how do you intend on exhibiting that characteristic?
I think just leading by example is important. Being there every day, showing that you care, dressing professionally, addressing the students as equals and treating them as adults, and showing them that not only does their work and their effort matter to you, but that it's important, and that it's important that you show them that you respect them in order for them to respect you as well.
Okay. The third question is, state standards and their associated tests play an increasingly important role in American schools. Please describe how they might impact your teaching.
When I first started taking education courses, I was kind of against state standards. Saw it as kind of constricting. I looked at my favorite topics in history and saw that the Middle Ages were dedicated to 2 days in a world history class, and that bothered me because I would have liked to delve more into that. But having taken more education classes and looking at the purpose of these standards, I've started to see them more as guidelines than as restrictions, and they really set you up as it's a tool that you can use, and it gives you a way to pace yourself, a way to know when you're on track and when you're not. You set a schedule at the beginning of the year, you try to stay with that, and you set days to go back and cover material that students are struggling with, but then you also have a way of knowing if you're on target and what the students need to know, because in the end we're trying to make sure that they have a basic knowledge of the content area and that every student is kind of on an equal level when they come out of that course.
Okay. The fourth question is, if you could have a long conversation with anyone in history, who would you select, and what 2 or 3 questions would you ask that person?
Wow. It's a good question. You could almost divide that one up by era.
Okay.
I
Take your
guess-
best shot.
Well, let's see. Well, most recently I took an American history course on the Civil War, and just looking at the different, the generals and things like that, be really interested to speak with Grant, who was a general during the war and a future president, and who really had to make some tough decisions to win that war. He really, like, the one resource that the North had over the South was men, and Grant beat the South by basically bleeding out his men and theirs. And so just to talk to him and ask him questions about both, like, on a militaristic standpoint, like how he came to make those decisions, and on a moral standpoint, because while he won the battles, it had to rest on his conscience a little bit, sacrificing so many good young men for that. So it'd be an interesting conversation to see how he would view that inwardly, how he would justify it, things like that.
The next to the last question is, please respond to the following quote. There is no such thing as a bad student, just a bad teacher.
I completely agree. I think students want to learn. I think they want to rise to expectations. And I think when bad students come about when teachers don't challenge them. I think you have to push your students even when it appears that they don't want to. And you have to have expectations for all of your students that are equal. You can't expect less from a student who's struggling than from the student at the top of the class. You want to push them all to challenge themselves, to push further, to go after their interests, to go after their goals. And when you push them, like, they'll rise to the occasion. It might not be as far as you want, but it's a good step. And you set that standard, and they'll keep rising, they'll keep going, and it'll take a little time, but definitely with guidance and a little effort, any student can be a good student.
The last question, Jake, is imagine it is the year 2019. What do you see yourself doing?
2019. So looking about 5 years from now. So definitely would see myself in a classroom. Hopefully I'd like to teach freshmen or sophomores. World history or an early United States history course would be ideal. Definitely want to get them early in their high school career, because I feel like that's where you can do the most good. By their junior or senior year, their path is already kind of chosen. Kids know if they're trying to go to school or not, if they're trying to go into the workforce. But as freshmen coming in, or even as sophomores, you have an ability to impact their lives, to inspire them to push for higher goals and higher dreams. And I'd really like to be able to have a positive impact on students and make it so that students that maybe never thought they could go to college or didn't want to in the past might be more interested or might look further into that. Just the idea of maybe being able to help students reach a higher level than they previously thought is definitely somewhere I'd like to be at that point. Outside of that, I'd love to also work in extracurriculars within the school. I would love to potentially coach baseball. Baseball is a big passion of mine, and I like the idea of being able to work with students from that side as well. In the classroom, you help them develop academically, and in sports and on the ball field, you really can instill discipline and responsibility and teamwork and camaraderie, and it's different aspects of their life. So I really like the idea of being able to help mold students in a very complete manner, both from the academic side and from the discipline and athletic side.
Thank you, Jake, and you know I wish you well.
Thank you very much.